On the bench today, we have the Nobels ODR. We're going to tear it down, analyze the circuit, add a switch to control the clipping, and create some great tones. The Nobels ODR is known as the Nashville session musician's favorite pedal. It's got gain or drive, it's got level, and then it's got this spectrum control here. It's a tone control, so we're going to see how that works. When you feel it turn, it has a little notch in the center, like it's supposed to be in the center, and then you deviate this way or deviate that way. And then the other thing is it can go up to 18 volts as well, so the power supply range is 9 to 18 volts. Why don't we next take a look at the schematic and see what makes this circuit individual. It's green and it's not a tube screamer, so let's see what the schematic says. I typed into Google Nobels ODR schematic. This is the first page that came up, piezo tones, and it looks like he made his own ODR. It's all in Spanish. I'm not a big reader of Spanish. It says something about a clone there though. Here's his schematic, and his major mod, it looks like, is that there's a hard clipping section here, and he's made that switchable between germanium and silicon diodes, so we can have a look at doing a mod like that if we wish. Let's get to the original schematic, which he references here. It's a buffered input. Follow this wire down, track down. It's a buffered bypass, and then that goes all the way out. So that's a buffered bypass. And the two interesting elements, or the two elements I think that define the tone of this, is probably this soft clipper circuit here on the first op-amp stage. And then straight after the first op-amp stage, there's a hard clipper. So it's both doing soft and hard clipping. And then here, this whole section, center it up, this whole section here is the tone circuit. And the first thing that jumped out to me when I saw this tone circuit was this guy here. And this is called a gyrator. And gyrators are typically used as inductor replacements, and they're often used when you want to do parametric EQ. When we looked at the pot earlier and said, well, it's got a little notch in the top, I think this might be some kind of parametric sweeping EQ. And so that's the first thing I want to investigate and actually do some measurements and find out what the performance of, or what the behavior of this EQ section here, because I think that's a key tone definer in the ODR. Let's get some instrumentation out and do some measurements. I've now got the Nobels ODR hooked up to a UA Vault, which then goes to the frequency response software on the PC. I've set the gain, or what they call a drive, down to minimum, so there's not much distortion here, so hopefully we're just passing sine waves, a sweeping sine wave through. And I set the level to just below halfway, and now there's this notch in the center, so I've kept it centered. So let's perform a frequency sweep. Great. I'm going to now do another 2 frequency sweeps, one with the knob down here in this position, and then one with it in this position. So I'm going to run those now, and let's take a look at the results. So here are the results on the PC. So this flat line here at the top, that is without the pedal engaged, so that's flat. And then these next 3 plots represent the signal when the sweep when the pedal's engaged. So first observation, it is a filter, so it cuts off all the lows and it cuts off all the highs. So no lows, gone, no highs. And then the next interesting thing is what we do around 800 to 1 kilohertz, which is the famous mid-range of your guitar. So we're either attenuating, this attenuation that you see here, this dip, that is with the spectrum control all the way to the left, i.e. turned down. This next one down is with it in the middle, so we got a flat. And then with it turned all the way to right, we peak the 1K. So it's a very interesting response, definitely optimized around guitar and not bass with these frequencies. What it is essentially either a peak or a attenuation of the mid frequencies of the guitar, and it de-emphasizes the high frequencies and the low frequencies. Interesting. Here's our measurement setup. So we've got the signal generator, 1 kilohertz sine wave, 300 millivolts peak to peak output. We're going straight through the pedal now, and what you can see on the scope is the sine wave straight from the signal generator. It's buffered, remember though, because there's a buffered bypass. Now let's engage the pedal. And so with the settings that we did on the frequency response, we were actually attenuating output of the drive. So if we turn it up to about there, I think that's unit again, isn't it? Yeah, about. And so that's fine. So the next thing we want to do is test this spectrum port. So we're in the center now. Yeah, it went down a little bit. And it goes up a little bit. So that kind of confirms to a first order. Let's apply a bit more drive. Oh, we can see a good clip coming there now. Enhance the kilohertz. Attenuated a kilohertz. Technically, it's probably doing more work at 800 hertz if you remember the plot. But this is the filter, and if I rolled the frequency down to say 100 hertz, we probably see a large attenuation. And I rolled it up to say 10 kilohertz or less, probably see an attenuation as well. So that seems to be working okay. Now let's peak it a little, and let's turn our gain up now. Okay, so when I turn the drive up, we start to clip with 300 millivolts in here. We start to get a kind of a square clipping going there. And then after halfway at 1 kilohertz, I don't see much difference. Oh yeah, but when we enhance the kilohertz, we're really driving the circuit hard. And it turns into a square wave almost. And then we turn this down, and that's a nice shark fin. They're at 1 kilohertz, so we're not driving, we're attenuating the circuit going into the clip. Sorry, we're attenuating the circuit in the filter. And here, this could, yeah, this may be the filter op-amp overdriving that we see when we get to something around here. Similar to the behavior that I saw on the clone pedal. Now I've got the drive set at full, so I'm seeing about 900 millivolts peak to peak here, and this is a 9 volt supply. So let me increase that power supply now to 18 volts. So we're on 18 volts now, and there's not much of a change. And I think that's down to the hard clipper. I mean, the hard clipper doesn't let anything pass. The only thing that we're probably doing that's different is giving the op-amp a lot more headroom. So when we drive it a little harder, the characteristics are slightly changed. Whether that's an audible, noticeable difference between 18 volts and between 9 volts, I don't know. But let's also try this. Let's turn the level up. And turn the voltage down, so we're back at 9 volts, not much difference. When there's a hard clipper, I've always been perplexed on what is the actual audible difference. Sometimes I feel I can hear it, but I've not done an extensive amount of measurements that really prove increasing to 18 volts with a hard clipper that limits the voltage in the signal path to that of the diodes. The forward voltage of the diodes really has an effect. Right, with that now, that's a great segue, is what if we remove those hard clipper diodes? What would the pedal look like if we did that? So why don't we take it apart and see if we can do that? I have it disassembled. It's under the microscope. And first thing is, I've located 2 sets of diodes, a set here and a set here, and these are in between the gain and the output pot. And then these two are next to this op-amp, and we can see this is a JRC 4558, and I already know the pinouts of this. I think pin 5, which is the one to the right hand side, is inverting or non-inverting, but pin 6 is another input, and pin 7 is the output. So if we look at those tracks, we've got these diodes going between the input and the output of this op-amp. So that definitely means they are the soft clippers, which by default means that these two guys here are the hard clippers, which is unfortunate because it's going to be really hard to get the soldering iron in between this big electrolytic cap, this pot, and this pot to be able to take out the hard clippers. But I think that's what we need to do. Let's try and figure out how we're going to do that. So let's take a look at the actual mod. So here's the board. And then those are those 2 hard clippers. Those are the soft clippers that we just saw under the microscope. Probably going to drill a hole here That just looks like it's copper plated for screening, and then drag wires from the pads of these guys here. Maybe the pads from these guys, could remove those as well, and take them down through to this mezzanine area. These two come apart. These two boards come apart. I've got a switch here, normal size switch, and it actually just fits nicely in there. And then we'll attach the diodes, or the new diode configuration. And this is a center off switch as well, so when it's in the center we won't have clipping. When it's one way we'll have stock clipping, and when it's the other way I might do asymmetrical clipping. We'll see, but that's what I'm thinking about with this pedal. I've removed the diodes. They were here and here across these two pads. I've cleaned it up. I've re-tinned each one. I didn't manage to lift any of the pads either, so it's all good. So I think what I'd like to do now is put the scope on again and see how our peak-to-peak voltage, or how the signal changes without these clipping diodes in place. I've got it re-hooked up to the scope now with the missing diodes, the hard clippers. I've got the gain or the drive set to 0. This should be unity. This is set to the center. So let me double check. Find that little notch. There it is. Yeah, it's set to the center. Now let's engage the pedal. Okay, that looks good. Yep. So that is unity. Turn up the gain. Okay, I think it's a bigger signal now. I'd have to double check. But the clip characteristic is now more akin to a blues driver or a tube screamer. It's got more of those circuit characteristics with the soft clippers. Turn it down a little bit like that. That's clean, so that's clean boost. And then if we crank this up, yeah, we get a lot more headroom, it looks like. And then if we peak the mids, we're getting 2.5 volts out. Peak the mids some more. Now we're overdriving. Turn it down a little bit here. And that's effectively becoming a nice clean boost. So that's good. So what we want to do now is actually put a switch in so we can get it back to normal, and then do some side-by-sides. So I've got the white wires hooked up. You can see I've passed them through a hole, so that makes it more mechanically sound to the center area, and then just put some hot glue on it so it'll last a long time. And then the switch is 3-way, so the center position, nothing's connected. I flick downwards and I will have germaniums, 1N34As, and I put 3 of them in, so 2 in one direction and 1 in the other, so that gives us an asymmetrical clip, which might be interesting. And then silicon diodes, MA150s, and they are just regular symmetrical. So with the switch in the center position, I've got it set, and you can see it's a nice clean sine wave. So why don't we try and clip it upwards? It's going to be a two-handed job, I think. And so that is with the regular diode. So let's turn this knob up. This is our gain. And there you can see that's the original clip that we had. And now if I switch it down and put the asymmetrical germaniums in, it's a completely different distortion now, and it looks interesting. And you can see the asymmetrical clip, there's more signal on the bottom than there is on the top, and so that's definitely a clip. And then if we turn it down, and this is more akin to a clon, you can see, yeah, we've completely chopped off the top with it in this position. So that's going to be an interesting sound. Wind this guy back, put it to the center again, 2-hand switch, and that's without any clipping, and then put it here. That is the original clipping, albeit with fancier diodes. I'm using MA150s. Now, when the switch is in the center position, we remove the clipping diode. So we're at 300 volts peak to peak at the input now. So if I put it to the center, so there's no clipping diodes, and then increase the input signal from 300 millivolts to 600, you know, it keeps going without much of a change. So that's a volt without clipping. Without clipping diodes, and it looks like we're boosting that level of distortion. And so if we just turn the distortion down a bit, it's making a lovely clean boost. And then if we clip in the germaniums, the silicons, the original, now you can see we've clipped the top off because it is a hard clipper. And then if we do the germaniums, clips even more off because it's a hard clipper, and the germanium forward voltage is about 0.3 versus 0.7 for silicon. So that's good. So now we've created a reasonably versatile pedal that's got the filtering section of the Nobels ODR, but we can set it to have a clip like a tube driver with the switch in the center position. We can have a clip like a blues driver, or we can have a germanium asymmetrical clip, or we can have a silicon symmetrical clip. I think I'm going to plug the guitar in now and see what kind of tones we're getting out of this thing. Okay, so here's the pedal off. Pedal on. Gorgeous tone. So that's our standard tone. So now if we tweak it, or let's go to the center. So now we've taken out the hard clippers. So we're going to get a lot more headroom, especially if we turn this guy up. So that, in effect, is overdriving the preamp. We're putting a large signal into the preamp, so there's no hard clipping. So why don't we now try the asymmetrical clipping. Turning up the gain. Removing the mids. I really like that. So that is with the asymmetrical clipper and then the parametric filter just off center. So we're boosting some of the lows and attenuating some of the mid frequencies. That's great. So I'm now going to button it up, clean it all up, put it together and do a final test. I've got the pedal buttoned up now and we've got the drive just slightly on, spectrum set to center, and the signal looks good. And so now if I take the switch to the center position, that takes the clipping diodes out of the circuit, and you can see now we've got more headroom. We're not seeing the effects of the silicon clipping diodes, which is good. So that's come a boost with a parametric filter. Now the last thing I did was do some asymmetrical hard clipping with germanium diodes. So let's switch those in. Now the signal's smaller as expected, and so I'll turn up the gain. Sorry, the level, so the output signal's higher. And you can see there's more signal the top half of the waveform than there is at the bottom half of the waveform. Very fine. We have asymmetrical clipping. And then if we go back down, turn the volume down, you can see the shape of the distortion is different, and we can see the contribution of the hard clipping section. No clipping, germanium clipping. So I think we're good. So now I'm going to get my Telecaster, plug it in, and see what sounds we get. We have the guitar plugged in, clean sound. Pedal on. As expected, nice and twangy. Let's move it to the germanium now. So that's an asymmetrical clip. Quieter, so let's turn up the volume. Asymmetrical always appeals. Now let's just crank up the gain a little more. Leave the filter here because I think this is a good position for the Telecaster. Like if I put it down here, it becomes muffled. But just there sounds great. Let's now do the final thing so that you heard it just get louder, because we have no clipping to compress it. So we've got tons of headroom now coming out of the pedal. Turn the drive down. And let's engage the neck pickup. That's lovely and harmonically rich. Yeah, it's much cleaner with the hard clipping diodes removed. So that's it. Please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching the video.